Hello and welcome. Debra back with another episode of Ask Fleurish. This is episode 22, and we're going to answer that question that we get asked multiple times a day. Every day I get DM'd about this, I get messages on Facebook, I get messages on Instagram, I get emails. How the heck do you make a smooth finish? I'm going to help you. It's not as hard as you think. I'm going to use our Jolie paint, of course, because it really does make the job easier. Jolie really is a nice, smooth, very beautifully leveling paint. And we have our everyday guide that explains how to do a smooth finish. I'm going to contradict it a little bit. And I've got, videos, there's papers, there's all kinds of things. But I'm going to show you a couple different ways to do it, and then you can tell me which way you think is best. So I have two finishes here. I just finished a certification class, which is going through the Jolie Everyday Guide, all 6 finishes, each finish on a separate board, and instead of giving you a basic overview like our basics class does, we dive deep into each technique. Really great for people that want to take their painting to the next level, they're doing this professionally, or they have a side hustle and they really want to be legitimate. So I did these 2 finishes here. One of these is the smooth finish, and the other is the basic finish, and I did tweak it to my way a little bit. And I just did a little poll here with a couple of the staff members, and they both guessed that this one was the smooth finish, saying that this looked much smoother than this one in person. But actually this technique is what the basic technique is, and this is the smooth technique. So I'm going to show you both ways and kind of challenge your thinking on how to achieve a smooth finish. So I just took a quick base coat on this very large board. It's actually still a little bit damp because it's just a really thick piece of plywood. And I'm using our Jolie graphite. And the reason I'm using a dark color is because unlike when we ladies wear dark clothing to hide little lumps and bumps and make us look a little slimmer and hide little imperfections, when you use dark colored paint, it shows everything. And I mean everything. Every teeny tiny little nick, flaw, whatever, it shows up. So you want to be extra, extra careful in how you apply your paint to make sure that you're not exacerbating that. So I'm going to start out, I'm going to do half the board. Actually, Anna, will you grab me a piece of tape? There should be some tape right back there on Doug's saw. And I'm going to split my board in half. Perfect, thank you. And it's funny, when I take this tape out, I feel like a dream I was teaching striping today. Future episode. That's really funny. I totally forgot about that. I was teaching y'all how to do a striped finish in my sleep, apparently. That is funny.
You and your dreams.
Okay. I dream of painting. Yes, I do. I do. All right, so I'm going to split my board here so we have a little more of a comparison. All right, so the first way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to do this the way that most people think that you need to achieve a smooth finish. And that's using a synthetic brush and brushing with the grain. So in this case, my grain is actually going this way on my board. And so I would dip into my paint, and I would leave it a little thicker and apply it this way, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That's how you would do latex. And if you do that with this paint, you're going to end up seeing quite a bit more brush strokes than I know you're going to want to see. This is not going to be a super smooth finish. It may feel smooth, but you're using, look at how much paint. It takes forever to do this. And I know I'm using a smaller brush, but really, like, this is painful. It's so slow. I'm just not patient enough for this either. I'll do that. In the Everyday Guide, it suggests that you add water to your paint. And most suggestions on the internet, if you watch other YouTube videos outside of mine, they'll probably tell you to add water to your paint also, and I just don't recommend it. Here's a couple reasons why. One is, of course, you never want to add water to your can of paint, and a lot of people will give you that warning and say don't do that, because all water has different minerals and things in that will somewhat contaminate the paint, and that sounds like kind of a strong word. Really, it can grow a little bit of bacteria, especially when you are talking about a paint like ours. It has a lot of natural ingredients in, so you seal it up, you put it on the shelf for 6 months, you open it up, and you're like, oh my gosh, it smells bad. It's because it's growing some bacteria. Now, the bacteria is really in the water, and you're fine to use the paint. Once the paint dries, the moisture, the water is evaporating into the air, that bacteria is going with it. It's not going to hurt your surface, but it doesn't make it fun to paint. The other reason why I don't like adding water to my paint is that you're usually going to put too much. So I've heard as much as 50-50 for especially doing washes, which is a ridiculously high amount of water. And even like the 10 to 15%, I challenge that. I really think you're going to end up just needing to do an extra 1 to 2 coats of paint doing it that way, because you're putting on basically a heavy wash on your surface. That's a lot of water. So what I really like to do is just have a little cup of water next to me, and I'm going to dip in to my paint, and then I'm going to have a little bit of water on my brush, and I'm thinning just down a little bit, and it really helps stretch the paint and helps it flow out nicer. I can wet my surface just a little bit. This is extremely absorbent board. If I had a previously painted surface, I would not need anywhere near this water. This is tons and tons and tons of water. Does it look like tons? And I'm using tons, okay? Tons. If I used this much on something that had been painted prior, it would just be a big, watery, sloppy mess. So you'll notice I'm painting with the grain, because that's what we've always done with latex paint, what we've always done with oil-based paint. We brush with the grain. Sorry for the sirens. We always get those. We get a lot of sirens here, right in the middle of several fire departments and whatnot. We're on a main street, what can we say? All right, so I'm wetting my surface just a little bit because this is super absorbent. Said if this was a previously painted surface, I would need 1/4 of this water at the most. Tiny bit goes a long way. Getting into my paint, back and forth, back and forth. This takes a little while to do too, doesn't it? I am already bored. Are you bored from watching? I'm bored. This just takes too long. So I'm brushing this way, and I can brush off in one direction if I really want to fuss with it and let that go. Now I'm going to show you how to do it, what would be considered like the basic finish, but I'm going to tweak it just a tad. And I'm going to encourage you, if you really want that extra smooth finish, to try it this way. I really, really, really like the Jolie Signature Brush, because look how much faster I'm going to be able to get my paint on. So I am going to slightly dampen my surface just because it's super, super absorbent right now with this wood, so this plywood. If I were not working over plywood, I would not need to dampen my surface, but I would still keep this little bit of water next to me. But this is what's so great. Like, you can just tweak it how you need to do it to make it work for you. There isn't just one magic way of doing this. So now I've got a little bit of water on my surface, and it's absorbing quickly because it's that nice, thick, dry plywood. Again, if this was a previously painted surface, I would not need to do this part, but now my brush is a little bit damp. So my paint's gonna flow a little bit better, just that damp brush. So I'm gonna stick that paint on here, and I'm gonna do these, look at these broad strokes. Any which direction I'm getting my paint on. Oh look, I'm done already. Huh, that's a little faster. Just a little. Now here's the trick. I've got a slightly damp brush, right? Slightly damp brush. So if I've used just a hint of water on my paint, now I'm gonna tickle the surface. And I know that's probably not a technical term, but it really describes what I'm doing. So just the weight of your bristles, you want to just barely touch over the top. And what this does is it kind of feathers the surface and it smooths out all those little brush strokes. And you'll notice I'm going in different directions, just tickling the surface, just barely touching it, ever so lightly, ever so softly. And it's taking out some of my brush strokes. Okay, here's the other thing. As this dries, when I'm working in one direction, my lines are very long and straight. So now, especially if I put some wax on it, which I'm going to want to do, or another type of clear coat, this holds true for any kind of paint that you're doing in this dark color. Your light is reflecting. It's a hard bounce off the surface. So now you see those lines because they're very solid, very straight, very linear. You notice the brush strokes and your brush marks across there. And any little interruption or slight variance in that perfectly straight line, such as a little divot in the surface, you know, a little bit of, if there's a piece of molding that's off so slightly, isn't quite square because it's an older piece, anything like that is going to throw off your eye and it's going to look uneven, okay? This surface, because my brush strokes are going in different directions, now when it dries, especially if I get a little bit of shine to it, the light is refracting in all these different directions. So now your eye sees it as a much smoother surface than this one. Pretty cool, right? So not only is this faster and easier, and you're going to be able to cover your surface better, but it's so much more fun to do, and you're going to get better results. So I want you to try it. Really, I still have to fight myself on this from not wanting to do those straight lines when I want it really smooth. But every time I do, I regret it because this looks better every single time. So let me know what you think. If you've got any questions, any ideas for a future episode, you can put it down below. You can DM me, you can email me, or you can let anyone on staff know at any of the stores. We'll see you next week. Bye, guys.